Sean.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Sean.
Oh, sorry, I was just having a bit of a connectivity issue there.
Oh dear.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
the little Irish guy called Murphy. Right.
Full house.
Yes, nice full house over here. And we've got a guest by the looks of things. Hello, Lisa.
Oh,
Hello, Jenny. Hello, Potter.
Hello,
Hi,
Potter.
Jenny.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
It's cold out in the
Gallivanting.
Cape.
Wonderful. Lekker.
Cold. I'll get
Right.
away from the cold and then I'll get into the cold. Eyeball.
Yes, that's what I thought. All right.
Summer's
Oh, sweet. Oh, what do I hear?
Somebody's got guests.
yes. Got my
Okay.
grandson.
Oh, good.
Oh, moeder.
Oh, yeah, I am going to get going before we get any later over here because of guests from all over the place and more guests coming in. Okay, let me mute everybody, just because it's easier for the recording. Please note this will be recorded and I will send the recordings out afterwards. So let me just mute everybody. And yeah. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Tech Tuesday. The Tuesday where I do a little bit of a deeper dive into all things nutrition related. And tonight, I've been asked to cover the topic of sports nutrition. Over here in the Southern Hemisphere, we are heading into spring and obviously towards summer, which will obviously get a lot of people out into the great outdoors, where we should be anyway. Some of us are more privileged in the warmer parts of the country to be able to get out and about pretty much any time of the year, which is wonderful. But we're going to be covering sports nutrition, which is quite a broad topic because there's so many different areas that one can go into. It's actually quite technical and specialized. So I'm just going to cover this with some very, very broad paint strokes, just so people can get a pretty much better idea of what is sports nutrition, what does it relate to, and why is it different to anybody else's nutrition? And the simple answer there is that athletes are putting their bodies through a whole lot more stress and strain, and as a result, damage than most other people. And therefore, they need better tools. If you've ever watched a Formula One racing team in action, you will understand what I mean, because when we pull into a garage to fill in fuel, we don't have 40 people around the vehicle changing tires, cleaning windscreens, swiping our nose, filling up with fuel in about 6 seconds flat. And I've watched the guys at the racetracks with the motorbikes, and they weigh everything from the driver down to his equipment to the amount of fuel that goes into the machine. It's that technical. And when you get to professional sports, it's that technical. So this nutrient has to be X amount and that nutrient has to be Y amount. It can get very, very tricky and you need a specialist from that perspective. But let me share my screen. Let me find the correct one first of all, because I've been doing a whole lot of other things over here. Here's my... Sorry, that's not even the correct one over there. Sharing. You can see where all my where all my bits and pieces come from. That's the one I'm looking for. Okay. I've been doing a lot more research just recently as well. As you can see from a very, very full desktop. Let me just hide myself over here. Okay, so we are covering sports nutrition, and really this is just a very broad overview. So what is it? What is sports nutrition, and what makes it different to nutrition for non-athletes? Sports nutrition is the foundation of athletic success. And when you get to the professional levels, the difference between somebody coming in first in a 100-meter race and somebody coming in last is point of a second. But that point of a second makes all the difference. And it's a well-designed nutrition plan that allows active adults and athletes to perform at their best, because an athlete at peak performance isn't treated as a human, they're treated as a machine, quite literally in some cases. It supplies the right food type, the energy, the nutrients, and the fluids to keep the body well hydrated and functioning at peak levels. Because if your nutrition is out, you will not be able to participate at your optimum in your sport. And again, I'll refer to professional athletes. That is the difference between winning and losing. And winning and losing, we are talking huge amounts of money, because it's a business. Sports nutrition is unique to each person and is planned according to individual goals. And this is why I say this is covering very, very broad strokes, because what works for you as an athlete won't work for me as an athlete, and vice versa. So everybody has to be looked at as a unique entity. There's not one cap that fits all heads. You've got to treat the individual person individually. So the first thing and the most important thing over here of the basics is the energy required for living and physical activity comes from the food we eat and fluid intake. And before I get too much further into this, I must just emphasize the fact that nutrition and supplements are very much of a contentious issue in the sports industry. We often hear of these athletes who have been caught using banned substances. And this is what happens when you supplement. Because if you're eating food, there's the chance of you being caught with banned substances is highly unlikely. But if you're taking a supplement, that risk becomes significantly higher. And the supplement doesn't have to just be a vitamin or a mineral. It can be a simple medication, because the athlete has got a cough or cold or flu. That medication can form part of the banned substances, which again can be a career ender in that particular field. Macronutrients in the following food groups supply the energy essential to optimal body function. And the first one, which is probably the one that most people understand quite clearly because it's often referred to, is carbohydrates, or simply known as carbs amongst the athletic field. Because without the carbohydrate, you are not going to be able to partake in your sport. Carbohydrates are either simple or complex, and the most important energy source of the human body. It is literally the fuel that your body relies on. And complex carbohydrates is what you find in food, and simple carbohydrates is what's been refined. Simple carbs include sugars naturally occurring in foods like fruits, vegetables, and milk. We all need sugar. What we don't need is, pardon me, is processed sugar. And often when people talk about sugar, we think, and I know I'm guilty of that, you mention the word sugar and you think of that white crystalline stuff that you put in your tea or your coffee or you sprinkle over your cereal. And yes, that is sugar in its purest, most refined state. All the good stuff has been removed from that. And all you're left with is the simple carbohydrate. when found in food, sugar is a lot more complex because it's mixed with vitamins and minerals and proteins and enzymes and all sorts of different things, and that is a complex carbohydrate. So your body will convert the sugar that it needs as when it needs it. Whole grain bread, potatoes, most vegetables, and oats are examples of healthy complex carbs. Your digestive system breaks down the carbs into glucose or blood sugar, which feeds energy to your cells, tissues, and organs. So we live in an incredibly complex machine. That is our body. And if we simply put the fuel in, your body will do the rest of the processing. But we've got to give it the correct fuel. You will not ever put in diesel into a Formula One racing car. They have specialized, refined fuels that they use. Same thing with a jet aircraft. You will not put in normal petrol or diesel into a Boeing. It will not take off the ground. They need special fuel that burns at a different rate. Same with us. If you are going to go off and run the comrades tomorrow, you're not going to ply yourself full of sugar and cereal and junk. You're probably not going to be drinking 2 liters of soda before you take off on your run. You will not get to the end of your run. You will probably die before the end of it. So you've got to give yourself the correct fuel. Proteins is another word that most of us are probably familiar with. Not just carbohydrates, but proteins as well. Now, proteins are made up of a chain of amino acids and are essential to every cell of the human body. Our bodies consist of protein. Protein can also either be complete or incomplete. A complete protein contains all the amino acids needed by the body and include animal sources like meat, fish, poultry, and milk. Now, dependent on the source of your information, as I discovered during the research of this, some people will tell you that there are 20 amino acids, and some will tell you that there are 22 amino acids. Incomplete protein sources, which are typically plant-based proteins, often lack one or more of the essential amino acids. Essential amino acids cannot be made by the body and must be supplied by food, which is where the term essential comes from. Protein plays an important role in muscle recovery and growth. So if carbohydrates is a fuel, our muscles are the engine, and engines need protein. Those with higher protein needs might benefit from using a dietitian-recommended whey protein powder. And this you'll often find amongst, again, professional athletes and bodybuilders and guys who spend an inordinate amount of time in gym because they need the specialized protein. Protein powders often contain additional ingredients like vitamins, minerals, and enzymes that may interact with certain medications. So be careful. And if in doubt, my recommendation is always speak to your dietitian and probably even your pharmacist. With no disrespect to any doctors or physicians who will end up watching this, most doctors are not trained in nutrition. So speaking to your doctor probably isn't going to get you the best information unless you're speaking to a doctor or a physician who is a specialist in their field in sports nutrition. One name comes to mind, and that is Professor Tim Noakes. He is a medical doctor, and he's basically spent his life studying nutrition and specifically sports nutrition. Whey protein specifically can reduce effectiveness of some antibiotics and medications for Parkinson's disease. So if you're on an antibiotic or certain medications, speak to your pharmacist, tell him or her what sort of protein you are using, and ask them if it will clash with the medication that you are using. Because pharmacists understand these things better than anybody else. That is what they do for a living. Also, those with kidney disease following a low protein diet may not benefit from a protein powder and could in fact end up with problems. So these sort of people need to work with a suitably qualified dietitian who can understand what is in that protein and how it's going to clash with their kidneys. Sorry, can we get a mute over there? Yeah. The next topic that we'll get to is fats. And we often hear, oh, fat, I'm not going to have that because it's got fat in it. Or I'm not going to eat this because it's got fat in it. Well, fat isn't always the enemy. And in fact, fat is another energy source that our bodies rely on. But you want the healthy fats, not the unhealthy processed fats. So many fats, here's my good area, have received a bad rap for many years. Consuming fat has been blamed for causing obesity, increased cholesterol, and health problems. And it's not actually the enemy. Now, fats can be saturated or unsaturated, and they play a vital role in the human body. You don't have any fat at all, you could get quite sick. Unsaturated fats are considered healthy and come from plant sources like olive oil and nuts. And in this picture over here, you will see a few other examples of unsaturated fats. Saturated fats are found in animal products like red meats and high-fat dairy, which are indicated to increase the risk of disease. I will add in my personal opinion on this one. I do believe this depends on the source of the red meat and the dairy, because in some areas, these animals are grown in rather unhealthy conditions, and therefore, and they're fed rather dodgy foods or food-like substances, and that can cause problems. Whereas if you have a free-range animal who are not regularly treated with antibiotics and they don't have other funny additives added to their feed, you will generally find that meat is significantly healthier. Similar to the misinformation surrounding carbohydrate restriction, fats have been lumped into the bad food group category for too long. The truth is, it's important to eat fats every day for good health. Fats are necessary for energy and hormone production, vitamin absorption, maintaining the membrane integrity of every cell in our body, and growth and development. So what is the goal of sports nutrition? Active adults and competitive athletes turn to sports nutrition to help them achieve their goals. And we're talking not so much the guy that goes out to play golf every weekend, unless he's a pro, or the person who plays the odd game of bowls, or even somebody who just goes for a regular walk. You are being active, but you're not competing. Competitive athletes are professionals. Think about professional rugby players, professional cricket players, professional cyclists. These are the guys who take sports nutrition to a whole new level. Examples of individual goals could include simple things like gaining lean mass, not fat, improving body composition, or enhancing athletic performance. So they're gaining the lean mass, maybe somebody who's wanting to lose a bit of weight, improving body condition or body composition, again, wanting to lose a little bit of excess fat, or they're obese or whatever, but they just want to tone up. Maybe they don't have to lose a lot of fat, but they simply want to tone up and look better and have stronger muscles. Or they could be a professional gymnast or a professional bodybuilder or professional athlete, as I've mentioned before. These sports-specific scenarios require different nutritional programs, and most professional athletes actually have a dedicated team working with them. And those teams include a suitably qualified medical doctor, a suitably qualified physiotherapist, a suitably qualified nutritionist, and dietitian. When you watch these guys at work, it is quite incredible. It is literally like watching a pit stop in a Formula One race. There's so many specialists around the star athlete. Research findings indicate the right food type, caloric intake, nutrient timing, fluids, and supplementation are essential and specific to each individual. And if you take rugby, for instance, you're not that clued up on rugby, but your forwards need different nutrition to your wings, because the wing does a lot more running than the forward does. If you're looking at American football, you'll see your quarterback is a lot sturdier and more solid because he doesn't do quite as much running, whereas the other guys do a lot more running around. So each person has to have the correct food. The following are different states of training and competitive sport benefiting from sports nutrition. So it's not just a case of you wake up in the morning and you go, I think I'm going to go and become a professional golfer, or I'm going to go and run the Comrades, or I'm going to go and become a professional tennis player. These guys take years and years of grooming and training, and often start from childhood. So eating for specific exercise or athletic performance. Training programs require a well-designed diet for active adults and competitive athletes. Research shows a balanced nutrition plan should include sufficient calories and healthy macronutrients to optimize athletic performance, because you don't want to get midway through a game and suddenly have to sit down because you're out of breath, your legs are cramping, your muscles going to spasm, or your heart is beating at such a high intense rate that you are at high risk of having a stroke or having a heart attack. The body will use carbohydrates or fats as the main energy source, depending on the exercise intensity and duration. Inadequate caloric intake can impede athletic training and performance. For example, and according to research, energy expenditure for extreme cyclists competing in the Tour de France is approximately 12,000 calories per day. If we had to try that, well, we would look significantly bigger than a Tour de France cyclist. Active adults exercising 3 to 4 times weekly can usually meet nutritional needs through a normal, healthy diet. Moderate to elite athletes performing intense training 5 to 6 times weekly will require significantly more nutrients to support energy demands. And when they talk about intense training, one of the Olympic swimmers, they interviewed them the one day and they asked them, what does a normal training day look like to you? And basically, I can't remember the exact times, but they would get out of bed between 4 and 5 in the morning and go to the gym. And they'd spend a good couple of hours in gym. Then they would go to the swimming pool and they would swim for 4 to 5 hours continuously. They would have a short break and go back to the gym. So all in all, they were pushing their bodies to the extreme for between 8 to 10 hours a day in preparation for the Olympic Games. And there's a lot of other athletes have got similar sort of training programs. I think of one of our locals. Her name is Candice, and she's a professional mountain biker. If she's not at the gym, she's on her bike for the best part of every day. Yes, they have a break occasionally, but I've known her from a young age, and even at school, she had to opt out of all sorts of fun things that her friends were going to, pizza parties and things like that, because she was already training then, and she wasn't even a professional athlete at that stage. She went on further. Well, Candice has since gone on. She has taken part in a couple of the Olympics. She hasn't won gold yet. I do believe that is going to come. It's going to take her another couple of years, but she has won countless other awards and races, including the Cape Epic on more than one occasion. And things like that take huge amounts of energy. So carbohydrates are the main fuel source for an active adult or a competitive athlete. General guidelines for carb intake are based on body size and training characteristics. So somebody my size would probably need less carbs than somebody 3 times my size. Carbohydrate needs in a daily diet can range from 45 to 65% of total food intake, depending on your physical demands. If you are sitting behind a computer for 8 hours a day, you're not going to need as much carbs as somebody who is on their feet all day and running around, pretty much like I do. Proteins are responsible for muscle growth and recovery in the active adult or athlete. Sufficient amounts of protein per individual help to maintain a positive nitrogen balance in the body, which is vital to muscle tissue. All athletes need protein after vigorous exercise because protein helps to repair and rebuild muscle tissue that is broken down during a hard workout. And because protein is the basic building material for muscle tissue, if you strength train or want to increase muscle size, you need to consume more protein than sedentary individuals or non-athletes. Protein requirements can vary significantly, ranging from 0.8 grams to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. If I had 2 grams per kilogram of my body weight, I would look significantly bigger than what I am. Now, fats help to maintain the energy balance, regulate hormones, and restore muscle tissue. Omega-3 and omega-6 are essential fatty acids that are especially important to a sports nutrition diet. And research findings recommend an athlete consume approximately 30% of their total daily caloric intake as a healthy fat. And I'm going to stop right there. We still have about 7 minutes left, but I'm just a bit afraid that this might cut out before then. Does anybody have any comments or questions at this stage before I stop the recording?